My father offered my boyfriend $4,000 to break up with me. I said it aloud into the phone, my voice unnaturally steady, like I was commenting on the weather rather than the moment my family imploded. The words hung in the air between us, suspended in their own absurdity. My own father, I continued, pressing the phone closer to my ear as I paced the length of my apartment balcony, right there on the terrace while everyone was having dinner inside. Aunt Elena's silence stretched across the line, but I knew she was still there. I could almost see her pinching the bridge of her nose like she always did when my father crossed. Yet another line. "Sophie," she finally said, her voice careful, measured. "Are you okay?" I wanted to say I was shocked, that I never saw it coming, that my heart had shattered the moment I heard those words slip from my father's mouth. But the truth was that somewhere deep inside, I'd always known this day would come, the day I'd have to decide who I really was, the obedient daughter or a person worthy of love. "I'm fine," I lied, watching the city lights blur below me. "Actually, no, I'm not fine, but I'm something else. I'm free." It happened during the cocktail hour of my parents' anniversary party, the kind of event where the champagne costs more than most people's rent and everyone speaks in the same practiced cadence of wealth. I was midway through a conversation with my cousin when I spotted them from the corner of my eye, two figures by the stone balustrade, one relaxed and confident, the other tense as a wire. My father and Jason. Something in my father's stance made my skin prickle. I excused myself from my cousin and drifted closer, staying just within earshot. $4,000 cash tonight, if you break up with her and leave right now. My father's voice was casual, as if discussing the stock market or tomorrow's weather forecast. Jason's face went pale, but my father continued, his words smooth as river stones. "She's still hung up on her ex, on Reed. His father's my partner. Think about how it'll be when she goes back to him and you're left with nothing." I froze, my champagne flute pressed against my chest, my heartbeat vibrating through the crystal. Then I took a step forward, revealing my presence, and time seemed to stop as my father turned and saw me, his eyes widening for just a moment before cooling back to that calculating gaze I knew too well. Jason shook his head, his voice quiet, but firm. "She heard every word you said." I reached for his hand, feeling his fingers close tightly around mine. We walked back into the house in silence, where laughter and clinking glasses created a surreal contrast to what had just happened. My mother smiled at us, oblivious to the tension, and asked if we wanted more champagne, but I just shook my head and made my way to the fireplace, where a folder lay carelessly on the mantel, the folder with my father's so-called evidence of Jason's infidelity he'd mentioned during their conversation. I picked it up, opened it, and after confirming they were indeed fabricated photos and messages, I slowly, page by page, dropped them into the fire, watching the flames devour the lies while the room fell into shocked silence, and my father rushed in, his face contorting with rage when he saw the last remains of his plan turning to ash. Money was my father's language of love, and ever since I was little, I knew the exchange rate was steep. As the only daughter of an influential financier, I learned that love in our family always came with conditions and carried a price tag. When I was 11, I took second place in a spelling bee, and my father didn't speak to me for 3 days, explaining later that bakers don't come in second. Meanwhile, when my cousin Mark failed his exams, he got a new gaming system as consolation and motivation to do better next time. I learned to be flawless, straight A's in school, debate team captain, scholarship to law school, all to hear something more from my father than a restrained acceptable, but his approval remained as unreachable as the horizon. My choice to date Jason, a talented artist whose work was beginning to attract gallery attention, was the first decision I'd made against my father's expectations. He wanted me to marry Reed, his business partner's son, whom I dated in college but who treated me like a trophy to be displayed and put away when inconvenient. "Art isn't a career, Sophie," my father had said when I first mentioned Jason, not even looking up from his paper. "It's a hobby for people who can't do real work." I'd nodded and changed the subject, but for once, I didn't obey. I kept seeing Jason, drawn to his passion and the way he saw beauty in broken things. Aunt Elena, my father's younger sister, was the only one who saw through our family facade and supported me unconditionally. She never married, built a successful career in publishing, and my father considered her stubborn and short-sighted. But to me, she was an island of sincerity in a sea of pretense. It was Elena who whispered to me a week before the fateful dinner. "Be careful, your father is planning something. I heard him talking to the Reeds about some business merger, and your name came up too often." And it was Elena who advised me to start digging deeper into my finances, especially the trust fund left by my grandmother that was supposed to come under my full control after my 30th birthday or marriage, which, as I now realized, was the true objective when my father tried to destroy my relationship with Jason and return me to Reed. My hands shook as I placed the last document into the evidence folder. 3 weeks had passed since the night of the anniversary party, and I'd submerged myself in financial records, using my legal skills and connections to access what my father had carefully hidden for years. What I discovered made me feel sick and furious at once. Systematic draining of my inheritance through a network of shell companies, all leading to my father's offshore accounts, along with forged signatures on reinvestment documents. Millions of dollars stolen from me by the person who was supposed to protect me. I gathered all the evidence into one file, creating an irrefutable chain of proof, and contacted the district attorney's office, feeling a strange calm, as if I'd finally put down a heavy backpack after hours of uphill climbing. Jason had been beside me through it all, not offering advice I didn't ask for, not trying to solve the problem for me, just supporting me with his presence and picking me up from endless meetings with lawyers and financial investigators when I was too exhausted to drive. My father called me the evening before the arrest, his voice unusually hoarse. "I know you're digging into something, and I suggest you stop. You don't understand what you're getting into." I remained silent, listening as he transitioned from threats to promises, then to guilt trips. "After everything I've done for you, you're really going to destroy this family?" I asked only one thing. "How much did you actually steal from me?" His silence was answer enough. The next morning, I watched from my apartment window as police escorted my father from his office in handcuffs, news cameras capturing the fall of a man who had always considered himself untouchable. In that moment, I felt neither triumph nor regret, just endless fatigue and a strange sensation of freedom, as if invisible chains I'd worn my whole life had finally fallen away. My phone buzzed against the kitchen counter, my mother's name flashing on the screen. For the fourth time today, I let it ring. It had been 2 weeks since the arrest, and the messages had evolved from shocked anger. "How could you do this to your own father?" To cold manipulation. "You've destroyed this family." To desperate bargaining. "If you drop the charges, we can work this out as a family." I hadn't answered any of them. The news was calling it the Baker Dynasty downfall, as investigators uncovered deeper layers of fraud extending far beyond my trust fund. Apparently, my father's prestigious investment firm had stayed afloat for years with money stolen not just from me, but from other relatives and clients who trusted him with their savings. The knock at my door startled me. Through the peephole, I saw Jason holding a paper bag of groceries, his face tired but calm. I let him in, watching as he moved around my kitchen with familiar ease, putting away food and starting coffee without asking if I wanted any. "Your mother was outside the gallery today," he said, placing a mug in front of me. "She wanted me to convince you to drop the charges." I wrapped my hands around the warm ceramic. "What did you say?" "I told her I don't control what you do." He sat across from me, his eyes gentle. "And that if she wanted to talk to you, she should start by acknowledging what he did." That small act of respect, not presuming to speak for me, not trying to fix things, made my throat tighten. I had spent so many years being shaped by my father's expectations that even now, with him in jail, I found myself bracing for the next demand, the next condition. "I keep thinking about that night," I said, staring into my coffee. "About the $4,000. Jason reached across the table, his fingers lightly touching mine. "I would have said no even if you hadn't been there." "I know. And I did." "No. That wasn't what haunted me. It's just..." I swallowed against the burning in my throat. 4,000. That's what he thought I was worth. That's the price tag he put on dismantling my happiness. The tears came then, not delicate drops, but ugly, body-shaking sobs that seemed to come from some deep, untouched place inside me. Jason moved to my side, holding me without trying to stop the flow, just letting me feel the full weight of what I had lost. Not just money, but the illusion that my father had ever truly loved me. The courtroom was colder than I expected. Or maybe that was just the chill that ran through me when my father entered in his prison jumpsuit, looking somehow smaller than I remembered. Our eyes met for a brief moment before he looked away, a muscle in his jaw twitching. The judge's voice echoed through the room as he read the charges. Fraud, embezzlement, wire fraud, forgery, a litany of financial crimes that carried a combined sentence of up to 20 years. My father pleaded guilty as part of a deal that would reduce his time to 15 years with the possibility of parole. I sat straight backed in the front row, feeling the weight of eyes on me, some sympathetic, some accusatory. To many of my father's friends and colleagues, I was the traitor who had brought down a great man. They didn't know or care about the years of emotional manipulation, the constant undermining, the subtle cruelty disguised as parental concern. When asked if I wanted to make a victim impact statement, I declined. What could I possibly say that would matter now? That he had stolen more than money from me. He had stolen my sense of worth, my belief in unconditional love, my trust in family? No, those words weren't for a courtroom full of strangers. Those wounds would heal in private. After the sentencing, my mother approached me in the hallway, her designer clothes hanging loose on her frame, her face drawn with tension. "Are you satisfied now?" she asked, her voice brittle. I looked at this woman who had stood by while my father molded and manipulated me, who had watched him steal my inheritance without once intervening, and felt a surprising surge of pity. "This isn't about satisfaction, Mom," I said quietly. "It's about consequences." She flinched as if I'd slapped her. "He's your father." "Yes," I agreed. "And I'm his daughter. That should have meant something to him." I walked away then, not dramatically, not with tears or raised voices, just a quiet exit from a life that had never truly been mine to live. Outside, Jason waited by his car, a splash of color in the gray courthouse parking lot. He didn't ask how it went. He didn't need to. He just opened the passenger door and said, "Where do you want to go?" I looked at the sky, feeling the spring sunshine on my face. "Somewhere new," I said. "Somewhere that's just mine." Time passes, strangely when you're rebuilding a life. Some days stretch endlessly as you navigate unfamiliar territory. Others compress into moments of startling clarity. 3 years after my father's sentencing, I stood in the doorway of my new office, watching the morning light spill across the hardwood floors. The sign on the door read, "Sophie Baker, Advocacy. Law," and below it, in smaller letters, "Specializing in cases of financial abuse and fraud." I had found my purpose in the ruins of my father's crimes, using my legal training to help others who had been financially exploited by those they trusted. There was something healing in transforming my pain into protection for others, in using what I had learned to ensure no one else would have to face such betrayal alone. Jason and I had moved in together 6 months after the trial, combining our lives in a sunny apartment above his studio. The walls were a gallery of our journey, his paintings capturing moments I couldn't put into words, my law degrees and case victories framed beside his exhibition announcements. We married last fall, in Aunt Elena's backyard, a small gathering of real friends rather than business connections. Our vows spoke of truth, support, and the freedom to be ourselves, not possession or control. When Jason slipped the simple gold band onto my finger, his hands steady and warm, I felt something lock into place, a sense of rightness I had never known in my father's carefully curated world. My trust fund had been partially recovered through the sale of my father's assets, and I used that money to establish an educational program for teenagers from troubled homes, giving them tools for financial independence and protection from manipulation, work that brought me more satisfaction than my father's approval ever had. My mother attempted reconciliation but still couldn't acknowledge her role in what had happened. She occasionally called, asking if I couldn't forgive and make a fresh start, but I had established clear boundaries, allowing her into my life only on my terms, which included honesty and respect. Sometimes I still woke in the night, hearing the echo of my father's voice offering Jason money to walk out of my life. But then I would look at the man sleeping beside me and feel profound gratitude that on that night by the fireplace, I had chosen not what my father expected, but what I truly deserved: love without conditions and a life without manipulation. Jason stirred beside me, his arm tightening around my waist. "You're thinking too loud," he murmured, eyes still closed. I smiled into the darkness. "Just remembering the bad stuff?" "No," I said, surprising myself with the truth of it. "The moment everything changed, when I heard him offer you the money." He opened his eyes then, serious in the dim light. "Do you ever regret it? Turning him in?" I considered the question carefully, not for Jason's sake, but for my own. "I regret that it had to happen," I finally said. "I regret that he couldn't just love me without trying to own me. But I don't regret standing up for myself, even if the cost was everything I thought I knew. Sometimes I wonder, was I too harsh in turning over evidence against my own father? Might there have been another path that wouldn't have led to the complete destruction of what remained of our family? But then I remember not just what he did to me, but to others who trusted him with their dreams and futures, and I understand that sometimes the only way to stop a toxic cycle is to break it completely, even if the shards cut you too. What would you have done in my place? Can you forgive someone who not only betrayed your trust, but deliberately tried to destroy your happiness for the sake of control? Share your thoughts in the comments, and if this story resonated with you, subscribe to hear more.